Hey there everyone, welcome back to another look between the lines. We have a bit more news involving the election, the groups involved, and of course the ongoing pandemic and what's going on in the world today. But before we really get into this, let me just say, from here at Between the Lines, stay safe. With what's going on, with everything that seems to be just falling apart and the tensions rising, there's new curfews being implemented as coronavirus is getting worse. Please, stay safe. Take care of yourself and your loved ones, and we will get through this. But for now, let's talk about what's going on between the lines. One of the first things that's going on is there was a Million MAGA March announced with notable attendees in Washington, D.C. this weekend. It was orchestrated by the leaders of very far-right groups such as the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and Stop the Steal. So with everyone that gathered there, the self-proclaimed Million MAGA March had very prominent figures of the far right-wing extremists, such as podcaster Nick Fuentes, who participated in the deadly 2017 Charlottesville Unite the Right rally, and Mike Cernovich, who pushed the Pizzagate conspiracy theory. So you're seeing a trend with a lot of conspiracy theorists and very far right-wing organizers being involved in organizing this large group of people protesting in DC. There hasn't been any violent outbreaks yet, and a large part of that is due to police intervention who kept anti-Trump protesters from marching on the hotels where these leaders were staying. Who knows what could have happened? All I can say is, thank goodness there was not a confrontation, and hopefully there won't be. But one thing is clear. There is a lot of thinning of the lines between the far-right extremists and the mainstream Republican Party that they seem to be influencing. A lot of this seems to have originated from the Stop the Steal movement, and that's not something that started this year in spite of all the litigation that President Donald Trump is pushing against President-elect Joe Biden and the legitimacy of this election, but this actually started in 2016 before Trump even won. The far-right organization was founded under the guise that if that election was close, the Democrats would steal it. And so they started gathering as many people as possible and spreading throughout social media, gathering donations and supporters to try and spread their message. This has been said before and will continue to be pointed out by prominent figures in academia as well as political leaders who have called out this is a multi-year long movement to try and undermine the legitimacy of our elections and the trust in the electoral system that is the foundation of our democracy and what lets us feel confident in who leads us and to follow the laws that they pass. So this is, again, multiple years that have gone into trying to undermine this process in the pursuit of power. And of course, media giants such as Facebook have tried to stop this. A Facebook spokesman even commented on this recently, saying that the group was originally named Stop the Steal, but changed their name and used a lot of other tactics to try and use misinformation and inauthentic behavior to artificially boost how many people were going to see their content. They changed their group names, they changed who they were trying to reach and what they were talking about, and so Facebook tried to remove a lot of those misinformation campaigns and the clusters that they came from. However, in spite of those efforts, this group has amassed close to 2.5 million followers, which means that millions more of Americans have been fed this misinformation and been exposed to all the other tactics that have been used and considered inappropriate. This movement didn't just impact everything online. Back in the 2016 election, they called for volunteers to monitor the polling places and make sure that the election's integrity was held tact. This led to a slew of lawsuits in battleground states by Democratic organizations who were accusing Stone and all of his affiliates of trying to intimidate minority voters and suppress their votes. This goes against everything the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act stand for and why we passed them. Voting suppression isn't just trying to influence people with force or barring them from being able to vote. It's also trying to intimidate them, trying to create an unsafe environment, and trying to push an agenda that should not belong at a polling place. That's why we have campaigns, that's why we have rallies, that's why we have media. The polls themselves should be above political parties. That is where democracy is born. That is where democracy happens, and that is where our freedoms are expressed. It should not have militant groups. It should not have influencers or trolls there to control, intimidate, or otherwise push some agenda when you are there to cast what you feel is right. So to reel this all back to today, all of this that's happening in Washington, D.C., and the influences that you've seen all over the news isn't something newer, and it's not a grassroots. It's something that's highly coordinated, highly politically motivated, and something that is building distrust in our elections, all to get hate groups and militants, conspiracy theorists, and those in between together to try and undermine the integrity of Joe Biden's victory. Which is pretty ironic, considering that it's only a conspiracy theory and only illegitimate if Donald Trump loses. So that says a lot about the legitimacy of what's actually going on. But while this is all happening, the holiday season is rolling up, and while people may be at each other's throats in the streets, families are going to be coming together and trying to enjoy the holidays. And this is something that health experts are starting to give warnings about, because during a pandemic, travel and gatherings are the worst thing that will only help spread the pandemic. And a big example of this was there was a wedding recently out in Long Island. 34 cases have come from that one event, and everyone that they went home to, everyone they traveled with, everyone they've been around, it could be affecting so many more. And that was just from 113 guests. This is what health officials are worried about, because our hospitals are getting strained. As the cases skyrocket to all new levels each and every day, health officials are at their limit. They're at capacity. Hospitals are getting to where they are starting to struggle. And most importantly, the next president, Joe Biden, and his team that he's trying to get is being barred access from the COVID relief teams that are currently in place and the information that President Trump has. So while we wait on the federal government to decide what it's going to be able to do, and for the current administration to open up its doors for the path forward, thankfully, some local states are trying to set in restrictions in place. For example, New York has set quarantine rules that if you violate them, you can face up to a $10,000 fine. Other states are, of course, talking about lockdowns, shutting down indoor dining facilities, bars, and restricting the amount of people that can be gathered for personal events and family get-togethers, including the holidays. All we can say here at Between the Lines, stay safe. Of course, we all want to see our loved ones, and we all want to be able to enjoy this season with those that matter most, but you don't know who you're going to be around, what they've been around, and what you're going to expose yourself and others to. So if you're going to travel, stay safe. If you're going to be around people, stay smart. And above all, no matter where you go, make sure that you try to keep up with social distancing and quarantine rules wherever you go to or come from, and that's just for the benefit of everyone else as well as yourself. No one wants their loved ones to get sick, and no one wants to be the cause of their loved ones to get sick, so please, stay safe out there and make sure that you take care of yourself and those around you. And while you're taking care of yourself and preparing for what's to come, with the talks of extended lockdowns, new regulations, and quarantine requirements, I'm just going to say this straight. Please, be considerate and have a plan. No one needs to have a ton of toilet paper or paper towels, but everyone needs to make sure that you have food and water. While medicine is important, please keep in mind that there are those in our communities that can only go once they've been paid to get what they need at that time. So if you go and empty out shelves, you're taking away from those people. You're taking away from others' means to survive. And so of course we want to give some general tips on how you can take care of yourself and prepare without having to hurt someone else or potentially put other people in jeopardy. This first should be a given, but please note that food and medicine expires. So if you're going to go and buy out breadstuffs, if you're going to go and buy out meat, if you're going to go and buy out other materials that other people could use on a moment's notice, at least do so with a plan. If you're going to get several months worth of medicine and you're not sick, note that some of that medicine is just going to sit in a closet until after its goodbye date. And beyond just the perishables and what you see everyone stocking up on, a big thing is toilet paper, paper towels, and Kleenex. And while those are useful, those are not necessary for survival. And so overstocking on that is kind of pointless, especially when that's produced in such mass numbers that you will never need to worry about running out for a long duration. And I'm not going to say that some people don't need this, but most people probably don't need 50 plus rolls of toilet paper to last a month or two. But everyone will need some, so please, just keep your neighbor in mind. Now, as for food stuff, if you want to go and buy food, rice, dried beans, canned goods, there's a lot of items that have very long expiration dates because they're dried out, sealed up, made to last, and most importantly, they can meet nutritional values in a pinch, and they're quite inexpensive. So if you want to stock up on something, turn to dried goods. Now, of course, we're going to talk about plastics and water because water bottles aren't going to be there for everyone if everyone goes and buys them out. So what you need to focus on are water filters and filtration systems that can work while you have running water, storage containers to be able to filter out your own water at home, and that way you are taking care of yourself while still leaving it to those that might not be able to have those means. All we can say is please keep your neighbor in mind. We are all in this together and we all have the same needs. And in this political climate and COVID and everything else that's going on, keep yourself and others safe, and tell you what, let us know in the comments what you're going to do. Let us know what your plan is, and if you think there's a better idea on what you can do to prepare for everything's to come and what people are talking about. And of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe so you can see when we come out with more content. And thank you all once more for joining us between the lines. Take care.